Hey guys, for those of you who own Ableton Live Suite, full version, and still struggle to get started with Max4Live, this tutorial is for you. With Max4Live, you gain almost unlimited freedom. You can create wild plugins and tools, but I know it might seem overwhelming at first. So I'm here to help, and I'm here to help with 3 simple examples to get you started. So let's dive in. Okay, we have a fresh session here, and let's talk about what do we want to achieve. We'd like to have we'd like to build 3 different plugins here, 2 MIDI and 1 audio. The first one, we want to build a simple MIDI transposition device. The second one will be simple synth. No, that's not right. Okay. And the third one, simple audio effect. Let's say delay. Let's see. So this is our objective, and I want these 3 things because in order to do this, we will have to explore 3 types of Max4Live devices. So you have MIDI, instrument and audio, and in order to get started, you just drag this device over here. You can see MIDI, Max MIDI effect. Instrument goes here, and audio effect goes here. And now notice the difference here, right? We have MIDI through in this case, right? This doesn't do anything. It will just forward MIDI. In here we have to actually build something. MIDI comes in, but outside we will have audio. Notice that as soon as we drop this plugin here, this switch to audio meter, right? If it's not here, it's going to be MIDI. And this one is just a simple audio plugin. Now, let me also point you to little things that people often miss, which is, first of all, let me create a simple pattern here. 4 notes. 4 MIDI notes, and let them play. This indicator shows that there's some kind of MIDI activity. MIDI comes in, MIDI comes out. So what is the flow here? What happens here is that this clip, MIDI from this clip goes to our plugin, and then it comes out. So we could now add an operator or a simple synth, anything really, and voila. But notice that over here we have already audio. So once again, the flow here would be, the signal flow would be, we're coming from this effect. Hold on a second. Yeah, I think this is better. From here, it's just MIDI, goes in, gets transformed somewhere on the way. We're going to build something here. And then it goes as MIDI to a synthesizer. But over here, notice it already comes out as audio, right? And this channel strip then goes to master. In the instrument, Max instrument version, what happens is that the same pattern here will come as MIDI here, but it will immediately comes out as audio, and it will go here. And it's hard to see, but notice that this already changed to audio indicator, audio meter. And finally, this one is simple because audio from whatever we have here will get transformed and will return and then go to master. So there are these are the three types of Max devices. And you have to decide always in the beginning which one you prefer. I mean, what do you want to achieve? So first tips, let's focus on what you're gonna do. I think the best is to start with this simple MIDI effect. To open MIDI, to open Max, any Max device, you have to click this little button over here. And this will open editor. So basically, this will open, this will show us what's inside this plugin. So this is our MIDI effect. And right now, nothing happens. MIDI goes through it unchanged. Now, this is fairly important to understand that, let me bring this operator here again. The preview button, I want to talk about it because if you miss this part, this little thing here, the preview is on, I prefer to always keep it on. You might get into trouble or it might be confusing. So let me show you. Let's zoom in. Right now everything's fine, right? We have MIDI through situation. I'm going to delete this cable. Broken. Perfect. I can work in, that's an amazing thing about Max. You can work on open patches and you can do everything real time. But if the preview is not on, you will open it and you'll try to experiment and nothing changes and you get frustrated. So always remember, preview, it's best to keep it on. So that's our first little tip. The second thing is, I want to, I want to make myself comfortable here. It's just, you know, a bunch of these comments. It kind of helps MIDI from live, MIDI to live, build your MIDI effects here. But once you know it, you want to get rid of it. And there's this annoying white line. This line indicates the limits of your user interface here. This is how I deal with this. I always go into Inspector, and if you click on, actually you can click anywhere. You just need to you need to find this pattern inspector. So Inspector shows you parameters of different objects, but if you click on empty space, you will be able to access this. And I always go to open in presentation mode. You need to click that. And notice what will happen to this white line when I do that. It disappears. Now, I don't want to go into details because I think the reason we are switching to presentation mode is because we want to build our plugin separately from user interface. So the reason would be, okay, let me show you. Let's say we have a dial here. We can add it to presentation mode. And when we switch this presentation mode, notice that this line appears again here. And what is going to happen is that when I save it, so let's save it, just test. When I save it, you see this dial is over here, right? But so we're hiding the plugin itself underneath when we go to patching mode. So that's why the line comes back to show us that we can build it over here. If you're starting with Max, don't worry about it too much yet. I think it's just a presentation mode for convenience. I like to do that, so you can be free now. And so that's a presentation mode, right? We should be tracking that. And probably the most important part is keep track on lock, because let's say we have an element of user interface here, and you want to move this dial. Well, you can't do this if you don't lock. Right now in lock mode, you can experiment on your patch. Now the very useful shortcut would be command click. This is what I always do. So command click, lock, unlock. Alternatively, you can hold command and just drag this dial. So this is our third little tip. Okay. Now, max MIDI effect. We have MIDI in, MIDI out. We want to change something about it. Well, what we want to change is we want to transpose this simple, silly melody that is playing in the background. And in order to do that, first we need to parse this MIDI, because this is a raw MIDI, meaning there are 3 bytes per note. They are kind of coded, and I don't want to go too deep right now. It's all about MIDI specification, but it's very difficult to work on that raw MIDI. You just need to make it more accessible. So we are going to use an object called MIDI parse, and we are going to connect it. And let's keep the preview on. I'm going to hanging notes, okay. Yeah. Now, so now this MIDI from the clip goes over here, and it's separated to different types of MIDI messages. So I think for most of us, note on is the most interesting. Now I'm going to press M. M and N, by the way, very useful shortcuts. I should probably write them. So N is new object, and M is message. So object is where you put magic spells, different words, and this is bread and butter of Max. Message is very good to monitor what is happening. I usually use it like this. I connect output to the right inlet, which is kind of counterintuitive at first. But notice that what happens over this cable is 2 numbers are flowing. The first one is MIDI note, and another is velocity. And to show you how it works, I'm going to change those velocities. And you can see different values here, right? So 60 is C, D is 62, 63 is E flat, and F is 65. Now, the next step we need is we have to unpack. It's a simple way of splitting this signal, splitting this list into 2 values. And I'm going to show you numbers, I, integer. If you press I, you get this little number box. Very useful, because now we can connect it here and monitor what is happening. Command D, duplicate. CMD plus D, duplicate. So as you can see, I do it in order to have these values separated from each other. I don't want to have them in the list. And you will see why I'm doing it. Before we get there, though, I want to see if I can put this together. Right now, I'm kind of breaking this machinery into pieces. Now I want to see if I can go back. So the reverse process would be to pack it and then MIDI format. And when I connect it, everything goes back to normal. So I know I can break it apart, and I can save the day. And now I want to build a simple transposition device. Well, new object plus, let's add 12 semitones to our MIDI note over here. And that's it. Little tip, if those cables kind of overlap, the shortcut is, I believe it's Command Y. It allows you to create, it's just purely visual, but it's convenient to have that. And that's it, guys. We have a simple MIDI transposition device. We can save it, and it works. Notice that we don't have a user interface yet. We can build it if you want. That's like an extra element here. You could now connect this dial to this transposition value here. Now obviously we have hanging notes, but I don't want to deal with it yet. And if you add it to presentation, you have a simple device that allows you to transpose anything. Okay, so that's the first device, right? So we talk about parsing MIDI and simple transposition. So we're done with that. Let's have a look at the second version here, which is simple instrument, simple synth. Let's open it. And let's zoom in, Command plus, just like in any other programs. Get rid of all unnecessary stuff. And let's go into presentation mode. Where's presentation mode? It's always hard to find. Yeah, open in presentation. Okay. Now we have a cleaner situation. So in this version, we begin the same. We MIDI parse the input, then we unpack, then we create two number boxes. Remember about shortcuts I. Everything is the same, but on the other end we have this object called plug out. This is simply audio going out into Ableton. I'm going to show you the first object called cycle. It's an oscillator. So let's do cycle 440 Hertz, and let's see what it does. See, we're just generating simple test tone. Now notice that both plug out and cycle has that tilde. It means that this is MSP object. So let's talk about the difference between these two. Notice the cable is also different. Yellow versus like normal, I guess. And you can see that in a list of objects over here, it's listed separately. So max objects are about sending messages, lists, single numbers, symbols. We're going to talk about it in some other video. But MSP is just about transforming signal. Very different types of devices, they use different cables. So in this case, we want to now have this situation where we connect this cycle to our MIDI. Somehow we want to control this oscillator with MIDI. The problem is, notice that if I connect this those MIDI values to cycle, we get around 60 hertz sound, right? It's like this mains hum sound. We need to convert MIDI values into frequencies. Normally we could do math, but we're too lazy. There is a wonderful object called MIDI to frequency, M2F, and we can just convert that. And here we go. Now the only problem is these notes are continuous, right? We don't have the original clip over here has those breaks, and we want to build something that resembles that. So let's add another object here called ADSR envelope, and 4 numbers that you type after mean attack. So let's say have 10 milliseconds, decay, let's have 500, sustain, let's set it at 0%, and then finally release, let's just do also 500, doesn't matter at this point. And the way this object works is if you send a message, let's say 1 to this ADSR, it will generate this envelope, and the values in signal will be from 0 to 1. And you can even see it over here. If I click this, you see for a moment it goes to 1 and then down. Very similar concept to modular synthesizers with voltage. So what we want to do now is multiply, but multiplication has to have this tilde, meaning we're multiplying signal. It's MSP object. So let's patch this. And here we go. So now nothing happens until I click this 1, which will effectively send number 1 to my envelope. Now, how do we connect velocity to this? Well, velocity, the range is from 0 to 127, and we want the range of this to be between 0 and 1. So it's very simple. You just divide it by 127 and add this little dot afterwards. It means float. Otherwise, numbers will be rounded to the nearest integer, and that will mean most likely it will be 0 or 1, and we want to have everything between. Let me actually quickly show you. If you press F, let's add this. F is, let's put it here. F is float. So let me show you the difference. This is integer, this is float. Integer, float. You get it, right? In this case, notice what happens if we divide. We have values between 0 and 1. If I remove this little dot, we have just 0. And the reason is it just rounds up to the nearest integer, not the nearest actually, it's floor mathematically. So keep in mind that if like it's very easy to forget about this little thing. I do it all the time. And now if I connect this over here, wonderful. Notice that this envelope responds to velocity. Right? And that's it. We have a very simple synthesizer. We can now adjust decay. And adjust velocities, whatever we need. Right? So this is our simple synth. We have it. And let's record it into our last patch here. Let's see. We want audio to audio effect. And let's record it. Beautiful, simple sine wave. Nothing fancy. Okay, that's enough. And so let's move now to the last effect here. No, we're not done yet. We're going to work now on max effect. Here I have audio file that I just recorded. And I'm going to open my max patch. This one I have to close. Let's save it as so in this version we have plug in, plug out, meaning audio comes in, audio comes out. And if you can see even the scope shows here, probe shows us the waveform here, left, right. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to add simple object called delay, tilde, and here's a little bit of like a tricky part that might be confusing. You need two arguments here. The first argument is the sampling frequency, which in this case I think it should be probably 44,100 samples per second. And the second number is how many samples per second you're actually delaying. Sorry, the first value is the maximum memory of the delay in line. So in this case I entered 44,100 because that's 1 second. But here I can say, well, maybe I'm going to delay it by like 1/4 of a second, more or less. Don't worry about those details right now. It's just to show you what's going to happen. So let's say the left channel goes through unchanged, but the second one goes with a delay. And you can now adjust the value of this delay. And that's it. So that's a simple max effect. We have a simple delay. And to sum it all up, MIDI transposition, simple MIDI goes in, out, we transposed it. Simple synthesizer without user interface. We should probably add something here next time. And simple audio delay. Right, guys, I hope it will help you get started. Try to do this as some kind of a drill. Just go over it and try to build those 3 devices, and hopefully it will help. All right, see you around.